So the first asset on our watch list for today is going to be the USOIL spot. And as you can see on the 1 hour time frame, we'll begin to notice some interesting setup gradually unfold on the chart, which will be giving us an insight into where price is likely going to be heading, at least for the first half of this week. But before we go into the details here, I would like us to run through the higher time frame so that we can have an holistic perspective into what is really going on in this market. And I think I started my analysis for this week right on the daily time frame. And in fact, we have a simple structure which we will be using to guide our trading decisions for this week. Now, the first thing I was able to identify on this chart is that key level had the $85 zone, and as you will see, this level have played a major role in determining the direction of price action since last year, September. So it's over a year now that this $85 area had been playing a major role in determining the direction of price action. Now, if we zoom into the structure, see what happened here last year. We saw selling pressure. We saw a little bit of consolidation phase around this area. And in fact, this lasted about a month between the month of October and November of last year. And not until the mid-month of November, we finally witnessed the breakdown of that $85 level. And in fact, in the space of between November and September of this year, we saw how price traded below this area to emphasize the strength of the sellers around that point. However, not until the second week of September that we finally saw the breakout of that structure. And in a typical nature of a technical breakout of structure, we expect that price at some point will come back into that area, maybe to retest it and incite an uptrend continuation, or break it down to incite a sell-off in this particular market. And if you look at what has been going on here in the last 4 to 5 weeks now, you will see that price action has been consolidating around that $85 area to further emphasize how crucial this juncture is in this particular market. Now, in addition to that key level are this couple of ascending trend line, which I was able to spot here. Considering the nature of price action since March, you will see price consistently found higher lows, and in fact, I have a couple of ascending trend line to buttress the strength of the buyers right now. And if you look at what has been going on here in the last 3 weeks, you will see how price had been respecting that ascending trend line just like it had been doing in the last 3 to 4 months, giving us a clue of how strong that trend line is. Now, the fact that price remains above that ascending trend line, we do want to look out for patterns and structures that supports the idea of buying that asset. And if price will interestingly climb back above that key level, this will be a beautiful opportunity to join an uptrend continuation. However, we are not going to ignore the potentials that sellers can also come in at this point, as a breakdown of this ascending trend line may be a beautiful signal to push price to the downside, maybe into that major ascending trend line in anticipation of another wave of bullish momentum or a breakdown to incite a sell-off right here. So you see that we are at a very crucial juncture. Price is around our key level and at the same time above the ascending trend line. So what we want to be doing here is to sniff through the current market structure on the lower time frame to see how participants in this market has been reacting to this area below the $85 level to give us an insight into what is likely going to be happening at least during the first half of this week. Now, I think I have a setup on the 4 hours time frame which I would love to share with you too as well. And in fact, we have an interesting reversal setup here, which is looking more like a double bottom structure. And one interesting thing about this structure here is that we are able to identify a reversal pattern within a reversal pattern. Very interesting setup. You will see what I'm talking about in a moment. Now, the first thing I did here on the 4 hours time frame was to take into consideration the nature of price action since this month began. And in fact, the first thing you will notice is that impulsive move that brought price into the $81 area. Now, as soon as price tested the $81 zone, we begin to notice that despite the strong bearish momentum, this area around the $81 level became a barrier negating all attempt by the sellers to break through that area. Now, the inability of sellers to break through this area made me label the zone as a demand zone that could probably be a platform to incite another wave of bullish momentum. Now, as soon as price tested the $81 area, that was during the first week of this month, we saw price retrace back into the $89 area. And in fact, during the course of last week trading session, the inability of sellers to break down the previous low was quite a signal that we might likely be seeing a reversal pattern where price will come back into the $89 area, which interestingly may be serving as the neckline of this double bottom structure, where the breakout of this neckline will be all we need to validate the potency of that reversal pattern. And of course, we do want to be buying at the breakout retest of that structure. However, if we look at the distance between where price action is right now and that neckline area, we have a whooping of approximately 500 pips, which we do not want to be missing. So we do not need to wait for price to break out of that neckline before we can start thinking of buy positions. So what we are going to be doing this week is to see how we can actually join a bullish momentum around this area before price finally breaks out of that neckline at the $89 level. Now, when I zoomed into the current structure, that is looking at price action throughout of last week trading session, remember that we took advantage of this bearish momentum, which we rode all the way into the $82 area. And one thing we noticed that sellers were unable to break down the previous low, and in fact we saw price transition into a potential reversal pattern again in the form of a double bottom structure, where interestingly the neckline is coincidentally in line with that key level we identified on the daily time frame at the $85 level. Now, with this situation here, we have another interesting reversal setup where the breakout of the 85 will be welcoming buying opportunity, hereby giving us the privilege of maximizing the potential move by having at least two positions by the time price will break out of the $89 area. Now, with this information we've gathered here on the 4 hours time frame, let's scale down to the lower time frame and see how market participants are reacting to this current structure. How are we going to be seeing higher highs and higher lows on the lower time frame to give us signs to get ready for bullish momentum, or are there chances that price will be finding lower lows in such a way that it will break through the $81 area to incite a massive sell-off? Now, for further clarifications, we scale back down into our 1 hour time frame. And as at this morning, while I was trying to decipher what is going on in this market, the first thing I saw was this bearish gap. As you all know, price action ended last week around the $84.70 level, and price action started this week around the $84.50 level. Though price started with a bearish momentum, we saw price drop into the $83.85 level, where we begin to see some buy pressure resume around this area. And as a result of this observation, we have a range to work with where price was initially confined within the $84.60 level and the $83.85 level, giving us a flat channel to work with. And of course, you know how we do it in this community. Whenever we have this kind of range, we do exercise patience and wait for a significant breakdown or breakout of this range to give us an opportunity to buy or sell. Now, with the situation we have here, you will see that price action had finally broken down the support line here at the $83.85 level and giving us an insight into some bearish momentum. However, if you look at what happened in the last hour, we have this engulfing bullish candle springing back out of that zone, making that area a possible demand zone for this week. Now, in addition to this range is an ascending trend line which was spotted. If we look at this structure using the candle chart instead, we have something like this after connecting the series of higher lows. So we have an ascending trend line to work with for this week. So hold on a second. All right. So we have an ascending trend line to work with for this week. And you know how we use our ascending trend line in this community. As long as price remains above the ascending trend line, we want to be looking out for market structures and patterns that supports the idea of buying. So in that regard, I would want to see price break out of the $84.60 level, which happens to be the highest point price action has been for this week, to give me an opportunity to buy. So I want to see price breakout, retest the $84.60 level. In fact, I can afford to have a buy stop order above that structure to join the uptrend continuation. And if price continues to climb high, then we also have another level around the $85.50 zone, which we duly want to be marking out on our chart. $85.50 level. So if price goes on to break out of that structure again, we shall be looking out for more opportunities to capitalize on that uptrend continuation. However, since we already have a breakdown of the support line here, we cannot ignore the potentials that sellers could still come in here. Now, what is the condition we want to see on this chart that will make us feel comfortable considering selling position? So since we already have an ascending trend line after connecting the series of higher lows, I would rather want to see price break down that ascending trend line, retest the structure to give me an opportunity to sell. And interesting enough, the ascending trend line shares a beautiful confluence with the support line of that zone, of that range, which is at the $83.85 level. So if we can see a breakdown of both this level and the ascending trend line, then a retest of structure, and price continue to remain below the structures, we shall feel comfortable selling the US oil spot. So it's a simple setup we have here on this asset for this morning. So let's see how the market will be reacting to the zone, as this is where our center of focus is going to be for today. That is between the $84.60 and the $83.85 area, which, depending on where the direction of the breakout today, will be determining what next we are going to be doing. So you do want to be marking out these levels on your chart, as you will be needing them as a reference point to guide your independent trading decisions. So I will be taking the next 10 to 15 seconds off. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to let me know in the comment section.